So let's begin by simply noticing whatever is present in your awareness right now, in this very moment. Perhaps it's the sound of my voice. Perhaps it's the breath moving in and out. Perhaps it's the state of your mind. Just noticing whatever is present in awareness right now, and just knowing it. This knowing, this simple, unadorned awareness is where wisdom lives. Not in a concept of what it might mean or not mean, not in a memory of a teaching about it, not in a desire for more of it, but just in this moment of noticing, of awareness. And this morning I want to speak about panna, wisdom. It's the last of the 5 spiritual faculties. And the word panna means to know thoroughly. It doesn't mean to have information about something. And it's not about understanding an idea. Rather, it's that living, dynamic faculty of the mind. Something that we are all born with, and something that can mature when the causes and conditions are in place. And something that, when it is fully developed, doesn't merely inform our practice, but becomes the practice, is the practice. So this morning we'll follow the same format as we have the other previous Mondays in June. First, I'll offer some thoughts and reflections on wisdom as a spiritual faculty. Then we'll meditate, and after a few words from Dan, we'll open it up for discussion. But first of all, a few thoughts about this quality of wisdom. What is it? Perhaps I'll start with what it is not. It's sometimes easier. And it is not, as I mentioned, conceptual or intellectual understanding, however clever and sophisticated. For example, we may be able to discuss the 3 characteristics very clearly. We may be able to explain impermanence very precisely. We may be able to talk about dukkha, suffering, very eloquently. We may be able to describe the concept of not self very well. And all of this is valuable, but none of it is panna in the sense that the Buddha intended. The great Burmese teacher, Mahasi Sayadaw, used to say that the moment a meditator first clearly noted the arising of a mental object and then completely saw its passing away, not as a theory, but as a lived experience, in that was the first genuine arising of wisdom insight. Actual wisdom, discernment, if you like, in real time, the mind seeing the truth of its own nature. And you may have experienced such moments in your practice. Sometimes they can come quietly, in my experience. An object that seemed solid and fixed can become softer and translucent. Sometimes the mind quietly opens and relaxes into something vaster and more spacious. And sometimes the breath can become very subtle and indescribably beautiful. Or sometimes these moments can arrive with some force, a clarity that felt like something was taken away rather than added, combined with a strong sense of spaciousness. These are all glimpses of panna, of wisdom as a spiritual faculty. And I think it's a knowing that is quite unlike other forms of knowing, which tend to be more cognitive or conceptual, as I said. I'd like to say a few words now about the relationship between samadhi, collectedness, that we talked about last week, the fourth spiritual faculty, of course, and panna, wisdom, the fifth one. And in a sutta called The Fruits of the Contemplative Life, the Buddha connects these two spiritual faculties by comparing a mind in deep samadhi, a collected mind, to a lamp in a windless room. And he says that in a windless room, the lamp flame doesn't flicker. It's perfectly still and steady. And likewise, from this place of mental stillness, of collectedness, of samadhi, the practitioner can then turn their attention to knowing the impermanence of all conditioned things, as well as the dukkha that can arise from craving, and a thinning of the self, perhaps. But the lamp's flame must be still before the practitioner can use the light to see clearly what's around them. This is why, of course, samadhi is the proximate cause of wisdom. Without a collected mind, wisdom is unlikely to arise, because the practitioner simply isn't able to discern impermanence or dukkha or not self with enough clarity. The mind is just too disturbed and unsettled to see clearly. So bearing this connection between samadhi and panna in mind, I'd like to go on and make a couple of points about panna, about wisdom. And the first one is that wisdom has a protective function. The Mahaparinibbana Sutta and other discourses as well describe wisdom as a kind of armor, not in the sense of being tough or hard or inflexible, but in the sense of providing immunity, of making us able to resist something. So a mind with panna and a mind that sees impermanence is not necessarily immune to dukkha, but it's not completely shattered by it either. So there is some immunity provided. In other words, a mind that has seen the impermanent nature of unpleasant experiences cannot be completely broken by aversion to them. And similarly, a mind that has seen the impermanent nature of pleasant experiences cannot be completely enslaved by craving for them. And the degree of discernment, the degree of wisdom into the three marks of existence that we have, is the degree of freedom and awakening that we have. And I think for experienced practitioners, these insights that we get on the cushion must be allowed to permeate into daily life. Wisdom that stays on the cushion in formal meditation is only partial wisdom. The faculty of panna, of wisdom, when it's allowed to develop, does not go away when the meditation session ends. It can inform how we live our lives day in and day out, how we meet anger and frustration when life doesn't go the way we want it to. It can influence how we receive compliments and praise without getting a swell head. It can influence how we cope with physical pain in the body, how we respond when our expectations collide with reality. You may have noticed this already. Perhaps you're a little bit less reactive now than you used to be. Or perhaps you recover a little bit faster when you're triggered by something. As Viktor Frankl said, there is a gap between stimulus and response. And for me, that gap is wisdom working, wisdom at work, not as a concept or an idea, but as a living spiritual faculty that can help protect us from suffering and allow us to navigate our lives a little bit more skillfully. The second point I'd like to make about wisdom is its relationship with karuna, with compassion. Because in practice, I don't think they're truly separate. As panna grows, then the perception of not self deepens. And one of its natural consequences is an increase in compassion. When I first heard this, I thought, this is really strange. It's kind of counterintuitive. If we think of not self as being a sense of coldness or indifference or a loss of something even. But over time, I've seen that it's actually very true. As this solid sense of self thins and fades, the experience of compassion grows. This is because wisdom naturally leads to caring more for others. In other words, the more wisdom we have, the more panna we have, the more the constricted boundaries of the self will begin to soften and dissipate, and the more the suffering of others becomes real to us. As we become less obsessed and caught up with ourselves, we can see others and their suffering more clearly. We don't need to work to generate compassion. It just arises all on its own if panna is present. And I don't think this is just sentimentality or mushy romanticism. It's wisdom. It's wisdom that recognizes that everyone suffers, and it's discerning the shared nature of the human condition that includes suffering. When we see that all beings are caught in the same push and pull of craving and aversion and ignorance about the true nature of life, then I think compassion becomes more real. So to me, there is a strong relationship between this spiritual faculty of panna, of wisdom, and compassion. I want to close with something quite practical. When we meditate this morning, which we'll do in just a few minutes, I invite you to bring in wisdom as a question rather than as a conclusion. Rather than going into the meditation with something to confirm that, for example, that phenomena are impermanent, that life is suffering, and that you are not a self, I invite you to meditate with what's called don't know mind in the Zen tradition. Letting your inquiry be open. What is actually here in experience? What is the nature of this? And who knows it? Who knows this? I say this because this open inquiry of don't know mind, I think, can be a source of much wisdom. And my suggestion is not to force a response to those questions too quickly. Let the mind settle first. Let the mind still and calm first. Let samadhi do its work. Then when you have some stillness, not to verify what you already think or know, but with fresh eyes, as if this breath, this sensation, this very moment of awareness had never been seen before. Because in truth, it hasn't. This moment has never existed before. It's arising now and only now, and it's already passing. It's wisdom that sees this. Wisdom is this. The mind, clear and awake, meeting this truth of experience without flinching, without grasping, without turning away, knowing. And that is all. And it is enough.